This is Off Track. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Off Track with Hinch or Rossi. On today's Tuesday episode, we amazingly have a guest who was, I imagine, tricked into being here and agreeing to be on the show, but we are endlessly appreciative for that. Our guest today is Mr. Barry Wanser, who, among many other things, you guys might know his beautiful voice from radio messages to and from Alex Palou, as he is the strategist on the 10 stand for your reigning champion and championship leader. Barry, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Nice. It's fun being here. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think we were just chatting. This is maybe your second podcast you've ever been a guest on. Beat to the punch by Dinner with Racers, as is pretty standard. They do a really good job and have been doing it for a while. But you're starting to get into listening to podcasts as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I listened to a few of the episodes that you guys have done. Certainly the one after St. Pete and Thermal and the Sebring, because, obviously we're very much IMSA fans at Ganassi Racing. We just don't have a program this year, but it's fun to watch and keep up to date on everything that everyone's talking about. So, but like I told Dinner with Racers, you guys must be running out of people to talk to if you're asking me.
You'd be shocked and amazed how few people we've actually had on the show. So no, you're right near the top. But I mean, I gotta be honest. I gotta ask this question: are you starting to listen to podcasts because there's like an active driver on it, and maybe he'll slip up some insider info from the team or from Chevy or something, or is this just general racing curiosity?
Really, general racing curiosity, and it's what we do. It's what I love is racing, and especially IndyCar racing. And I've been with Chip for 28 years, and it's IndyCar. So hearing somebody talk about it. With the personal experience and understanding like you guys have with the actual driving the current car. That's, I think it's very insightful and it's fun to listen to.
That's kind of you to lie. I mean, let's, you talk about your long tenure with Chip Ganassi Racing. Let's go back and give people a bit of an insight into kind of where you came from and how you got started in the sport in general.
Without going all the way back, but I came here to Indy to work for Chip Ganassi Racing in 1997. I started as an Artie's gearbox guy, and we won the championship, obviously, in 97, 98. Then I moved on to the chassis, the rear end of the chassis for Montoya in 99.
That also went pretty well?
It did. Started doing pit stops in 99, the jack vent, and, when it was in the center of the car. And then was fortunate enough to win my first Indy 500 with Juan in 2000. That was pretty amazing. And then for 2001, did some crew chiefing just at Indy. And then 2002, I was Jeff Ward's crew chief when we were learning the tracks in the Indy Racing League at that time. We were fortunate enough to get a big win over Little Al in Texas that year. Beat him at the line. And then 2003, I started the year as Scott Dixon's crew chief, and our longtime team manager, Simon Hodgson, hurt himself on his motorcycle, and Mike Hall asked me to step in for the rest of the year temporarily. So it was just before Indy. I took over the team manager role on IndyCar side, but I still got to do pit stops on Dixon's car. Ricky Davis was shop-based, and he came back on the road to be his crew chief, and I still got to do pit stops. So it was fun to win the championship in 2003 with Scott. But then in 2004, I was on the 10 car stand, and I've been there since 2004. And for 15 years, I did, the strategist kind of shared the duties with Chip, and he taught me how to manage the process, and it's one of the best things that ever happened to me.
So, I mean, how'd you get your start in racing? Was your first job in racing at Chip Ganassi, or what were you doing before 97?
So when I was in
first grade, just for reference.
That's just a jerk thing to say.
Well, there's one thing worse than that. The one, there's not a lot that's made me feel old, but when Alex came on, when Palou came on board, he was born the year I started with the team. So I always know how old he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in high school, just leading up to before my freshman year, when I was a kid, played year-round sports, and at that time it's football, basketball, baseball, and then when you get to high school, you got to make the team. And I didn't think I ate enough over the summer to make the football team, that's for sure. didn't make the basketball or baseball team. And some guys that were about 10 years older than me, 2 doors down from my parents' house, were building a Northeast Dirt Modified to race in New York, where I'm from. So my home track is Orange County Fair Speedway, 5/8 mile dirt track in New York, and did that for quite a few years. And then I went to work for a guy full time in dirt track racing for a couple of years, and that kind of opened up the doors for me to go into drag racing. So my first drag racing job was with the Top Fuel funny car, the Boston Strangler, top alcohol funny car. Worked there for about a year. They lost their sponsor, classic racing stuff. So then we went with a small team in South Jersey. And then from there, I went to work for Joe Amato and won my first professional championship in 1991, Top Fuel Championship. So that was pretty awesome. But, I always thought growing up doing dirt track racing, I'd end up in NASCAR. But that really never materialized. Drag racing did. But then, drag racing is the ultimate mechanic sport. Like, I learned so much about working on cars, beyond what I already knew. But it's an incredible sport. But to me, there was so much effort to watch the car run sub 5 seconds, right? And then you got to work on it some more. So I really was looking
45 minutes of disassembling, reassembling the engine between runs for 5 seconds of sub 5 seconds of entertainment. Yeah.
So, took a few years off from racing, and then was able to get back and got an interview with Mike Hall and Tom Anderson at the time, and Nazareth, and came to work for them 2 weeks later. So the rest is history, as they say. But it's been an incredible career so far.
Yeah, so far and not finished. You still out there competing at the very highest level. So let me ask you this then: coming from that kind of dirt short track introduction to motorsports, you went the NHRA route. You got in with the IndyCar team, but Chip at some point did have a NASCAR team. Was that ever an interest, of yours to kind of bug the boss and say like, hey, if there's an opening over there, I'd love to give it a try?
Yeah. So Andy Graves came. That's when Andy Graves came on board to run the NASCAR team after Chip purchased it, and Andy was involved with the Indy 500 program with Juan. That we had obviously a very successful month to win the race. And then went to NASCAR. And at that point, Andy was kind of recruiting me to go down there. And it's something my wife and I, like for me, it was like, man, this is what I dreamed about when I was a kid, you know what I mean? Like to work in NASCAR. So, it was a great opportunity, Lori and I went down and looked around and stuff. And it just felt like, I've got so many good things going on with IndyCar, and I love IndyCar racing. I'm just going to, I appreciated the offer, but I'm going to stay where I am. And, I'm glad I did. So,
I mean, I would say it's worked out pretty well. I mean, I'm just in my head kind of going through some of the names that you've got to work with directly on their car over the years. Let's not talk about even Chip Ganassi Racing as an organization, just you say you came in with Zanardi, you worked on Montoya, you worked on Dixon, went over to the 10 car. So that would have been guys like Dario Franchitti, if you've heard of him, Dan Weldon.
Yep.
You've got this young kid now called Alex Palou, Tony Kanaan.
Yeah, 4 years with Tony.
I don't know if I'd even put together, Barry, how many Hall of Fame, absolute legends of the sport that you've worked with and continue to work with. I mean, what's it like being able to look back on a nearly 30-year career with this team and just look at the who's who of the legends of this sport that you've got to directly work with?
It's to me, it's a privilege and honor really to work at Chip Ganassi Racing with all of the great people we get to work with. I mean, there's a lot of credit given to some, individuals that, and I like to spread out the credit but to work with the drivers that I've been able to, for sure. Like you can't win win consistently unless the drivers are fully capable of getting it done. I mean, ultimately that's where we've been fortunate, at Chip Ganassi Racing, Chip and Mike being able to get talented drivers. And, sometimes they're new in their career and sometimes it's later in their career. But, the goal is to get the driver. We want, all the cars to run up front. But like reflecting back, I only do that when I get asked about it. I look, we kind of tend to focus forward I always looked at it that, even with success, previous success does not guarantee future success. So you got to keep working hard. Everyone's got to work hard, and you got to be ready to adapt and change.
Do you have any dirt on any of them? You know, anything, any good stories about TK?
No. I got great stories about TK, but we're friends. We keep them amongst ourselves.
Okay, all right.
I mean, Hinch knows. He spent a lot of time around TK. TK is just a lot of fun. Constantly,
I've heard some legends.
Constantly involved with messing with everybody, and it's. I think I guess one thing that sticks out that like Tony will still be mad at me today about is he's really a very intense guy, and the spotters at the Indy 500, even even in practice and stuff, they play a pretty crucial role in making sure you're able to avoid things and understand what's going on around you, and hopefully prevent you from crashing. And we had a couple close calls one day, and Tony kind of lost it on the radio, which you can imagine. But the next day I kind of set him up, and I had the two spotters in the truck, and I was like, hey, TK, come on. I said, we're looking for a better day. Come here. And we walked around the truck, and two spotters in there, and I said, hey, Tony wants to apologize for yesterday. And like totally put him on the spot. He apologized, and he will he'll bring it up, like we'll be walking just down the paddock, and he'd be like, hey, you remember when you made me apologize and I wasn't expecting it? I was like, yeah, because you wouldn't have done it.
You know what? I have a $20 bet. I will bet you $20, Barry, that before the end of his tenure as the team manager now of an IndyCar team, he pulls that same trick on somebody else. I bet he turns that around and uses it on somebody else.
Absolutely. And I think one of the interesting things too is Dario was with us for quite a few years, and we certainly had a lot of success there. But it wasn't until he retired and he came back to the first race since recovering from his injuries and stuff, and was on the 10 car intercom and for the race with TK out in Phoenix. And he was like, and after the race, he just said, I just want to apologize if anything I said on the radio or doubted or argued with you, or, you know what I mean? Like, it was pretty funny. Like, yeah, you just didn't know. Like, we keep it calm on the radio, and you guys can go crazy. But
yeah, it's always funny when a driver gets the opportunity to be out of a race and see it from the pit stand. I remember when I got hurt in 2015, the first race I came back to, stood on the stand for the first time ever, and was blown away at what the dynamic is like there versus what of what's happening in the car.
Absolutely. And then, it's like, it takes the entire timing stand to do the strategy. It's like, Chip taught me for those 15 years we were together, like, you're managing the process, right? Ultimately, you have the final say of what you're doing, but you're constantly talking about the strategy. What would you do if yellow came out now? One guy can't look at all the data, can't look at what the car is doing, can't do the fuel. You need a group of people. And, we're fortunate on the 10 car stand. Julian Robertson is a great race engineer. He's been with the team for 31 years. He was the race engineer for Jimmy Vassar's, the very first championship in '96. He was Dixon's engineer for his first championship in 2003. And then he kind of was engineering manager for many years, wasn't doing race engineering. So it's been fun to having him back when Alex came on board, and just picked up where he left off. And, we have a great performance engineer, Brian Welling. I mean, again, it's, this experience and our relationship on the stand, we're constantly talking about it. And really, Alex, right now, he's given us all the options. If we need fuel saving, we need to take care of the tires. We need, he's very smart, and, some of the best drivers don't use all of their brain power to drive the car. They have a lot in reserve to be able to understand the racing and what's going on around them, with only giving them a bits of information about what's happening, early pitters, stuff like that. And he's got a great idea what's going on there.
We're 3 races in. Your average finish this year is 1.25. Your worst finish is second place. You've won 3 of the last 4 championships, right? Like, along with, like you said about Alex giving you the options and being, it all there and being able to figure things out, and the team that you mentioned, the people that you have, like, Is there a single factor that you can point to as like the biggest reason for your guys' continued success, or is it just that collection of everything?
I got to say it's a collection of everything, but Alex brings a lot of talent to the table. When I compare to what we've had in the past for championships, certainly in the 10 car, very much like Dario, very smart, a big part of the strategy before you even start the race. Like, there's sometimes it's a 50-50 shot whether you get the starting tires right. Serious. Like, right. When you go back to St. Pete, we were on the correct tires, starting on the alternates. We had the early yellow, gave us an opportunity to come in and get off them. And that was the strategy that won the race. But when we came off the track, we were fifth in our strategy. I think the 28 car had a slow pit stop, so we came out fourth. So at that point, I think we started 14th, but we're fourth in our strategy. You have Colton, Newgarden, and Dixon, then us. And really, when you look at how it played out, Colton, they had a slow stop. Newgarden pitted a few laps before us, so we overcut him. And really, at the end, the lap we came in on the last stop, behind Dixon, we were just covering ourselves so Newgarden wouldn't jump us, right? I mean, that's what you're trying to do. You're either trying to do an overcut or undercut, depending on who you're trying to pass or stay ahead of. And we came in and Dixon caught traffic, and, we didn't know at the time he had a radio issue at that time. And that enabled us to get him. But really, we just try not to, screw it up. Like, we talk about it all the time in the race meeting. Don't beat yourself. Do the obvious things right. We stayed out of trouble. We had great performance on track, great performance in the pits, and, came out with the win. Thermal, we ended up on the right tires, at the end as well, right? We saved the sticker reds to the end, and that was a huge advantage.
But again, that was a decision, right? So what I think for me, we talk so much about the strategy, on the broadcast, right? We're trying to explain to people. Townsend and I try to pretend like we know what's happening, even remotely, and sound kind of remotely intelligent. Again, it doesn't work that often. But I've talked to.
So you guys are trying?
Yeah, weirdly, if you can believe it. That's our 10/10's best effort on that one.
Wow.
But
okay.
I've heard like Tim Cindric say in the past, who again, another very accomplished strategist in IndyCar, that it's pointless to try to figure out what's going to happen. He goes, we on the stand don't even know what's going to happen most of the time.
Correct.
So obviously a lot of what you guys are doing is reacting to situations, and to react to a given scenario, you've had to have thought out and planned ahead for almost any possible, situation that could arise, and then know what your decision was in that moment. So I guess the question is, like, kind of run me through the process of the build up to a race and how you guys sort of decide your strategy, and how much planning do you do versus reacting?
If you just look at Long Beach, they added 5 laps to the race. It was still going to be a 2-stop race with, 1 lap windows, 1.5 lap windows. So 1 lap windows, right? And I think you needed it's no secret. The fuel mileage is the fuel mileage you need for the distance, right? It's based on the 18.5 gallons in the car and the distance. So you needed 3.3 average fuel mileage to get that done. But we all knew going in, the alternates were not going to do a full stint, right? So 90 lap race, you got to do 30 laps on each set of tires, right? On 3 sets of tires. Well, that was like, like no one anticipated you would even, I don't think I think you saw by the starting lineup with all the cars that started on the alternates that everyone knew that you weren't going to go a full distance on the alternate tire. So everyone was planning on getting off of them early. I think it was that was more of a reaction to what happened at St. Pete. But we're talking about that. We really don't even know we're about the tires until after the warm up, when we have to make that decision. And the only time we get to do any lengthy runs on the alternates is the warm up. So we get that set that we run for just in that a 10-minute session on Friday. It's pretty much just a quick qualifying sim, and then those are stamped, and then we can't run them again until warm up. So we run them as long as we can in the warm up. And I don't know if you noticed, the warm ups are 5 minutes shorter this year. So they're 25 minutes. So by the time you do like a practice start. Alex likes to do a practice start. And then we do 2 pit stops and to warm up the crew. And then usually that's about 17 minutes remaining, of practice. So, and, sometimes you might want to get a change in there, but so literally based on that and Alex's feel on the tires, we decide then what we think we want to start on. And then we're already talking about, the strategy of when we would stop, how soon we would stop. There's options. Obviously, everyone came in. I think everyone was kind of lured in once Newgarden was one of the first cars to go from the alternates to the primaries, and then we saw his first lap time was already faster than what we were running up front. But we weren't. We were behind after the start there. We were in 5th, so we were just kind of stuck in line. No one's really trying to check out at that point, which we were kind of surprised. So we're kind of stuck there. We knew we had some good performance in the car. And then cars came in front of and came in the pits, and we stayed out and did one blistering lap. There's nothing better than being on good tires and telling your driver, hey, as fast as you can go, maximum overtake, and then come in. And that allowed us to jump back up to 2nd. But, you, like you said, you're kind of reacting because could we have gone another lap and then, fast and then be able to come in and jump, Kirkwood, and possibly, but you also don't want to be overexposed and have a yellow come out, especially early on in Long Beach, everyone's getting real racy. It's, there's always, that's one of your highest chances there. So, but, we're always talking about the strategy. And like you said earlier, there's no like magic, 8 ball to tell you what's going to happen, right? You know how many laps you got to go. When you pit, then you know what fuel you need for, to get to the end of the race. And if you burn more than that, you got to make it up somewhere else. For that race, when you looked at the alternate strategy was actually playing out, right? The cars that started on the primaries and were going long, that was starting to play out because Lundgaard got within 34 seconds to us, right? Or should I say we were 34 seconds behind him when he was leading. And to us, we weren't going fast enough, but we couldn't get around Kirkwood and he wasn't going fast enough. Eventually they figured it out and needed to go faster because it was 38 seconds time lost in and out of the pits. So if we had gone
4-second difference there,
seven more laps slower, and next thing you know, he's coming out battling with us when he comes out of the pits. Right. So, but it worked out, and he obviously ran a good race to get up to 3rd. Right. So, where that same strategy didn't work out at St. Pete, even with McLaughlin going, like I'd say, even more flat out front.
For sure.
It just didn't work.
And that's what's fun about it is it's different track to track. We still show up with the same tires that we had in St. Pete, but it wasn't the exact same result. Trended the same way, but you guys have to be able to adapt and think on your feet. Now, when we were in Thermal, I guess, during the warm-up show, we had Chip come out and talk to us on the show. And we were talking a lot about Palou, and he made the comment, he goes, look, as good as this guy is, we're still just scratching the surface with him. He keeps getting better and better. And as the guy that's in his ear that probably has more communication with him on the team than anybody, I'd love to know your take on where Alex Palou is as a driver today and whether you agree with the sentiment that he's still improving and he's just going to keep getting better and better.
Oh, I firmly believe that. I mean, he is definitely getting better after every race. I mean, this is something that we talk about even internally. Like that's what makes it even more fun going to the racetrack. Being able to work, with a guy like Alex is just. He gives you all the options. Every driver's been in a situation sometimes where the tires have gone off, so they can't do what the timing stands asks them to do, or and they have to change or adjust the strategy for that. I mean, Alex is good at everything and understanding the races. There's not too many obvious things I have to tell him, right? Sometimes I just have to say it's obvious, like, hey, I know this is obvious, but we're not going fast enough with Lundgaard on the alternate strategy, but I know he just can't obviously just go, okay, I'll just turn it up and pass the car in front of me, right? It's not that easy. But Alex understanding the car and his relationship with Julian and the entire engineering staff is definitely paying off. And again, I think the sky's the limit on what he's capable of.
One of the things that's always blown me away about him is, we tune into his car radio from time to time, and the guy just never seems down. He never seems angry. He never seems emotional unless it's after a checkered flag and he's congratulating the boys on a great win. We've known Scott Dixon's nickname to be the Iceman forever because he couldn't crack him under pressure. He was always a cool customer, but even Scott could get animated on the radio when the right person pissed him off. Alex doesn't seem to do that ever. I remember for me, the moment I realized how dangerous this guy was behind the wheel of a race car was in 21. You're in the thick of a championship battle. We're coming down to the last third of the season. We're at the harvest, maybe the last quarter of the season. We're at the second Indy road course race. You guys have an engine failure while leading the championship. And he got on the radio and could not have been cooler, calmer, more in control, and just saying, yeah, no worries. Everything's good. And in that moment, I'm like, oh, you can't flap this guy. So have you, can you give us some insight? Has he ever gotten really angry on the radio? Have we just missed it? But it's possible. It's possible.
Nope. He's never gotten angry on the radio.
Never does it. Yeah. I figured that was it. Yeah.
You can imagine the frustration we experienced last year at Milwaukee with the battery failure, and a lot of people thought we had a hybrid failure, but we've told as many people as we can that was a battery failure. It went back to the manufacturer. There was a capacitor on the circuit board. The battery could have, it was a rare failure. It could have happened regardless of whether, it's the original battery of the car kind of thing. It's not, it could have happened prior to the hybrid, and the hybrid had no effect on causing the failure. So, imagine, you roll off from the grid and the car stops at pit out. I can't even talk to him on the radio.
Right.
Like there's no power to the car.
So maybe he was mad there. You just couldn't hear it.
I'm sure. Right. He must do a good job of hiding it. Right. When we got him back to the pits, we were fortunate it was at pit outs. We got him back to the pits. We were able to re-energize the system, and then, had enough energy to go around and stop on the backstretch. At that point, they got to get the driver out of the car to be able to lift the car. Right. They brought it back. He came back to, we got him back, made sure he came back to the stand. And, it's like, he's like, what are we doing? And it's like, well, we're hoping we're going to analyze it. We think it's the battery, everything we see now. We're going to change the battery, get it running. We need to get you back in the car. And wherever we are, we're just going to try to get as many points as we can today. We're going to run laps. We'll have you pit and not interfere with pit stops and anything else. You know what I mean? We're just going to avoid everybody. We'll avoid everybody on track. You may have to let some cars go, but we're just going to kind of stay out of trouble. And, we went from 27th to 19th, right? So that took a lot of pressure off us going into Nashville. You can imagine that was like, for all of us, it's like, man, we've got a good lead here, and now we've lost it all, and then to start the start of the race, I think when they were at the point, they're tracking the points, like we were kind of tied with power and stuff. And then, he had a problem unexpectedly, and that kind of gave us a little more breathing room. But, he was just calm, like, again, and it was like the worst case scenario you can have. Right. Like I said, Milwaukee, and he got back in the car and just was happy with, like, hey, there was some more yellows, there were some cars that dropped out, so every time we gained a position, it's like, yep, another point, and he focused on that. That was, he
that's
never,
what makes champions.
Absolutely. Never lost a school. And for all of us, we wanted to, right. You want to jump up and down and slam things and scream, but everyone did a great job there. But Alex he's calm, man. He's unflappable.
Yeah, I know. It's fun to watch. Honestly, it's cool to see someone in their absolute prime dominating the way that we've seen out of Dario, the way we've seen out of Dixon, the way we've seen out of Power throughout their different periods. And so I want to just kind of leave you with this final question. Right off the top, we talked about this list of legends that you've worked with one-on-one. A lot of different personalities in there, from your Zanardis to your Palou's that you've experienced. I mean, those are two nice polar opposite. Montoya to Palou. There's a couple. You got a wide range.
Yep.
So I'm sure they're all different. I'm sure they all have different strengths and weaknesses. But is there a consistent trait that you've seen in all of those drivers, the ones that were exceptionally successful in IndyCar, that was just consistent among the group?
I think the ability to focus, to have clear focus, not just it's the entire weekend. It's getting the most out of the car, being prepared for qualifying to get most out of the car. A lot of these tracks, everyone can put a theoretical great lap together, but man, it's really hard to put an actual get every corner right to get that ultimate lap time. And that's what these guys are capable of doing. These champions, they can do that. And then in the race, just having a complete understanding of the racing, and again, more focus and be able to be there at the end, and really understanding that if you can't finish first, finish second. Don't beat yourself. You got to get in and out of the pits clean. And those are the guys that motivate the crew. They motivate the team. They motivate the pit crew. They motivate the timing stand. That whole package allows you to have greater success than one racer, lucking into a race win.
Right. Well, look, we talk a lot about the drivers that have had huge success, but at the same time, it is a team sport, and it can't be done without you and all the people that you work with at Chip Ganassi Racing, and that team has had a tremendous run in this sport, and it continues, and you play a big role in that, Barry. So wanted to just thank you so much for coming on, giving us some insight into the drivers, into the process of what you're doing on race weekends, and we wish you all the best for the rest of the season, my friend.
Thanks. Appreciate it. And it's great seeing the broadcast. I get to see them, obviously the next day on Fox, but you guys are doing a great job. So
thank you very much. Appreciate
great
it.
for IndyCar. So thanks.
Yes, sir. All right. We'll see you at Barber. This has been Off Track with Hinch and Rossi. Off Track is part of the SiriusXM Sports Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, please give a 5-star rating and leave a review. Subscribe today wherever you stream your podcasts. We are at Ask Off Track on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, we're at Hinchtown and at Alexander Rossi. If you want to follow Tim, though we have no idea why you would, he's at the Tim Durham on Twitter. Find us on YouTube and subscribe to our channel for exclusive video content. Off Track is produced by Tim Durham, and by that we mean Tim.